Okay, guys, it's time for a very serious chat. New South Wales must not lock down again. We can't let it happen again. The last time Australia locked down, it cost us 800,000 jobs. Now, anecdotally speaking, I've got three siblings. Each one of my siblings has a partner, and they all got affected. I mean, between two of them, they lost four jobs. Between the third one, he ended up having his hours reduced. We can't do this again. We just can't. I'm not a business owner, and I can see the hurt that a lot of business owners are having after the last crisis. They're barely surviving. I mean, have we even had a look to see how many suicides there have been as an increase? Have you seen the data on the amount of phone calls that are coming in of people that are, they're having mental health problems. They're calling up these helplines, these 24-hour hotlines for suicide watch. I mean, how many people in the last lockdown weren't able to get vaccines for other viruses? How many people weren't getting early detection for cancer? Or what about the leading killer in Australia being heart disease? And how many people didn't get treatment or that nothing got picked up for that? I mean, we need to really assess if we're going to lock down again. We can't just do this again. I've been so frustrated watching our so-called betters, these so-called politicians who know what they're doing, absolutely decimate our economy, the people's lives. I mean, on a basis of numbers, how many people have died due to this actual lockdown that we've just come out of? It's July, and we're talking about a round two of this lockdown happening again. We can't do this. I mean, if we're talking about lessons that we've learnt from June or even before, I can tell you. Now, let me give you all 14 lessons, very briefly. 14 lessons that I wrote on the 5th of June last month. 14 lessons about the things that I learned with the benefit of hindsight. A lot of you know that I watch politics around the world. I watch the US very closely. I watched how Sweden, how South Korea, how the UK, how Italy all managed the virus and how they tried to mitigate it. And these were the 14 lessons I came up with. I've been testing a lot of the advice that we've been given, and I've been looking at how a bunch of different experts like Dr. Fauci has been wrong on things. And I've tested his advice with other advice from other experts. I've listened to other experts tell me why Dr. Fauci is wrong on certain things. And it's been absolutely amazing to see these lessons that I've drawn out of this. I'm not I'm not from a medical background. I work in the construction industry. I've got logic. How about that? And to see our politicians make the same bloody mistakes again and again and again. We've just seen these last couple of days, Victoria lock down 10 of their suburbs. And they're making the same damn mistakes that we had not so long ago. Why are we doing this again? We know the lockdowns don't work. We know that more people infect each other in their houses. We know that Sweden has probably adopted the superior model for dealing with this. So bear with me. I know these 14 rules, it's boring, but this is very important. I honestly feel this is very important. When I wrote these rules down, I gave the officials the benefit of the doubt. I was like, okay, none of us knew what we were dealing with when this virus came out. The Chinese local government, they didn't really talk to their own government even. They didn't really talk to the world, even though they were meant to, as per a 2015 agreement on pandemic management, a global agreement that they signed on to. No one listened to it in China. No one from that local province. But you know what? We've been dealt a poor set of cards. We dealt with it as best we could. We thought lockdowns were the way to go. And I believe that it wasn't. And that's not my belief. I base it off a number of different experts who have factually picked it apart and showed how places like Sweden were superior. So these are the 14 lessons I picked up, all the 14 rules. I'll tell you if there's one where I'm feeling a bit, I'm not sure. But I especially want the conspiracy theorists out there to listen very closely, because my views on this, they do not align with everyone's. Okay, I'm definitely going to make a lot of enemies, especially among the conspiracy theorists of this. I mean, many conspiracy theorists are still caught up about the 5G towers starting this virus. Give me a break, okay? 5G is in 10 countries, and the coronavirus is in every country except probably Antarctica. Now, I've had some time to think about the coronavirus and how it could have been better handled. And this is the first lesson I learned. Shut down the borders immediately. Number one, the US did that. Australia did that straight away. You know who didn't do that? The UK. And they copped it. They absolutely copped it. Now, lesson number two. We need to repatriate all Australian citizens back to Australia immediately. Now, when I say some of these rules, this is about the first wave. Australia did this very well. I mean, one of my cousins, he was in Spain when this outbreak happened, and he was called back immediately. They pretty much escorted him back to the airport straight away. Now, lesson number three. Protect the nursing and retirement homes as a top priority. Why is that the case? With this particular virus, I don't know how many of you looked into this, but everyone generally knows that it affects people that are much older. And when I say much older, I mean 60 plus. And it also affects people with pre-existing conditions that are very vulnerable. Now, I don't know if any of you knew this, but with this rule number three, it's very important. 70% of the deaths in New York State were in homes because the trash governor, Andrew Cuomo, he forced sick elderly people from those homes who said they were sick. He forced those people back into the elderly homes instead of being isolated in a hospital. So that resulted in 70% of their deaths in that state being from those nursing homes. Now today, 45% of all the deaths in America have been due to nursing homes. What does that tell us? That tells us that we need to disproportionately protect the nursing homes. Aren't I a genius? This isn't new. This isn't rocket surgery. This is ridiculous. Let's move on. Let's keep the ball rolling. Now, rule number 4. Vulnerable people in the population with pre-existing conditions or elderly people must choose their own level of risk on whether they should go out. But the government should strongly recommend that they don't. I don't want to see the government enforcing this. People are intelligent, believe it or not. If you are forthright with people, if you give them all the facts, and if you say, make your own decision up in this particular case, people were already social distancing. People were already wearing masks. I mean, a local shopping center where I live near, there's a big Chinese and Asian population. They were all wearing masks in that shopping center. They were all wearing masks. And that's great. That's good. That shows they're smart. It shows you can trust people to do what they should be doing. Let's keep the ball rolling. Encourage people to socially distance and do all of the other hygiene stuff that you usually recommend. And, you know, we all know what we have to do. We shouldn't be, shaking hands as much as we should have. Maybe if it's your mate, fist pump, or, if it's a business meeting, an elbow pump or whatever. Wash your hands, if you share a kitchen with people at work, you know what you have to do. Everyone knows what they have to do. It's common sense. Now, moving on from that, people were socially distancing, except, I don't want to go into the Black Lives Matter movement, but there was not social distancing happening with 60,000 people, protesting around Australia. That was not something we saw. So and I haven't seen a single head roll because of those marches. Not one. Not even in Victoria. And we know there were 2 cases of people that were with coronavirus in those marches in Victoria. But let's keep the ball rolling. Lesson number 6. Encourage wearing face masks when you're out and about in large, closed public areas like shopping centres. Face masks work. Now, I want to debunk something very quickly for you guys, very quickly. In the US, because this is a great case study, Dr. Fauci, which a lot of conspiracy theorists have been slamming, originally he said that face masks don't work. Why did he say that? He recently said to Congress, because he just testified this last week to Congress, he said the reason why he said that was he was worried about there being a shortage of masks for the doctors and nurses that really needed it in treating the patients. You need to understand, they were worried about there being this massive outbreak and there being a massive shortage and the healthcare system being completely overrun. Well, the fact of the matter is, it wasn't overrun. The US healthcare system actually coped quite well. Now, I mean, even in New York State, Trump, he actually sailed a medical ship up into the docks of New York State, and they didn't even use that. There were a number of different military medical camps that were set up around America, and they weren't used at all, not one patient. So the medical system wasn't overloaded. Now, the reason why Dr. Fauci said that face masks didn't work originally, as I said, was because he knew that this is the funny thing. If he was forthright, that would have been the better way to handle this. But instead of being forthright and saying this is what works, he tried to be clever. He tried to say, if I say face masks work, people will rush out and get them. So I need to be careful and say face masks don't work so that we can have time to get as much as we need for our essential staff working in these hospitals. Wrong move. Wrong move. In fact, the US ramped up their production of masks so that they never really had a shortage of masks. They were fine. And as a result, people were now left confused. The conspiracy theories ran wild. People don't want to wear masks. It's ridiculous. People think they're getting muzzled if they have to wear a mask. Be smart when you're wearing a mask. I mean, if you're out and about, if you're with people who you live with and you're out and about, I don't think you have to wear a mask. In fact, being in the fresh air, believe it or not, is the best way to kill the virus, get some vitamin D into you. But what we can't have is a situation where the government is not, it's making the people lose trust in what they say. We can't have that, because then they won't listen to you with these genuine issues that come up. They won't trust you. We can't get that trust back. It doesn't matter which administration it is. It doesn't matter in Australia if it's a Liberal or Labor, if it's a Democrat or Republican in the US. You need to retain the trust of the people, and the best way of doing that is being as 100% transparent as you possibly can. Wear a mask, people. I'll tell you when masks work really well, when everyone wears them. When everyone wears them. In fact, masks have been proven to show that people touch their faces less because they're wearing the mask. Now, if you put a mask on a kid, the kid's, good luck keeping the mask on the kid, But thankfully, in places like Iceland, I don't think they've registered a single death from a child with the coronavirus, so that's good. But adults, especially older adults, you need to be careful. Let's keep the ball rolling. Rule number 7, release the Bluetooth case detection tracking app to monitor any flares in cases to enable an early response. Now, I've done a video on this in the past. I've talked about the Bluetooth tracking app that the government released in Australia. I'm not worried about it, guys. I'm really not. In fact, listen to Martin Isles talk about this app. He hits it down very well. He tells you how it works. He did some research on it. I wasn't worried when I looked at it. In fact, I don't know if any of you know about, it uses very similar technology to the way that, those keyring finders that use Bluetooth to find your keyring? It's a very similar technology. The government is not storing information that it pins to your ID. It's very safe. And I want to give the government as much of a chance to actually solve this issue. I don't think throwing stones at the government in this particular issue is going to be it. Just stop, and this is where I'm making enemies on this. Conspiracy theorists, I have a great respect for you because quite often you're right. But in this particular case, it's stupid. It's honestly stupid. You need to pick your battles, okay? Let's keep the ball rolling. Rule number 8, you need to ramp up production of PPE gear and ventilators and prioritize medical professionals receiving them. In Australia, we had a relatively small supply of ventilators. I I think we had something like 4,000 ventilators in total. A place like America was really well prepared. They had 150,000 ventilators, and the rate that they were producing ventilators was phenomenal. I mean, Tesla alone, I saw them produce 2,000 ventilators. That's half of our supply that we started with in Australia. Now, we have offshored a lot of our manufacturing. That was a bad move. Whether it be medication, whether it be PPE gear, whether it be ventilators, we need to keep that stuff here. That stuff's essential. We've known that this pandemic could be a problem. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles in this particular case. So that's something I think we handled really well. In Australia, we didn't have a big problem, but then again, we didn't have a massive outbreak. Let's keep the ball rolling. Rule number 9, don't shut the economy for the love of God. Do not shut the economy. Young people, 45, maybe 50 and younger, they can keep the economy going. If you're older and you're working, that's fine. We can have you guys working from home. But if you guys look at the fatality rate from this, why are we locking up people younger than 40 to stay in home? Or even 50 and younger? I mean, look at the stats on this. It just blows my mind how Australia has been one of the biggest losers in terms of this virus. We handled it very well, but the threat was never really that big to us. Why the hell did we sacrifice 800,000 jobs? Our economy is shot. We ruined almost a 30-year run in positive growth. What's going on? I won't rant too much on that. Let's go to Rule 10. Protection should be made to allow older or vulnerable people to work from home, within reason, of course. I don't want people, taking advantage of that. But we could afford for people older than 50, or take your pick, you take your choice of risk to work from home, to work with, with Zoom, like a lot of people have been doing. That seems to have worked because our whole economy has been doing it. Of course that can work. Let's keep going. Rule number 11, an immediate tax cut to everyone, corporations and personal income tax. Do you know how much immediate relief that would have granted? Why the hell are we giving government handouts in this situation? I mean, literally the cure was worse than the virus itself. We sacrificed 800,000 jobs, not because of a virus, but because of government policy. There's one thing, conspiracy theorists, listen very damn closely, okay? Listen very closely. The government is terrible at everything it does. So if you think that this whole thing's a conspiracy, how the hell do you think they pulled that off? You can't believe those two things at the same time. They can't be both inept, but also an evil genius. Keep this in mind. That's what they accuse Trump of all the time. They say he's an evil genius, that he's a mastermind that's been, pulling the whole country down. And then they also say he's a buffoon that doesn't know his left foot from his right. You need to pick, okay? You can't have it both ways. Let's keep moving. Now this is one that I'm happy to have my mind changed on. I've said keep the interest rates at 0.25% as set by the RBA. Now that's probably the weakest rule I've put down, but I put it there nonetheless. I'm very open to having my mind changed on that. Rule 13, ensure that there is a wide testing capability available. Obviously we need that because we need to see where spikes spring up. We need to keep those things in mind. Now, I point to South Korea. They did a phenomenal job at this because I think they had a H1N1 virus outbreak over there recently in the last 10 years. And so their testing capabilities were phenomenal. I mean, they had a number of drive-through areas which they could test from the go with coronavirus. So it was very easy for them to pinpoint the hotspots. Similarly, that's what we need to do. Rule 14, don't close schools because a study in Iceland suggested that kids aren't vectors of the disease. Now, that's something where the scientists have to debate on that. But if you look at the fatality rate of kids, Iceland hasn't had a single death below, I think it was 14 or something like that, or 18. the fatality rate on this is it's so low, and we've completely sacrificed the economy. I mean, of course we need to keep schools open for medical workers and people at work, and we can't make these stupid decisions to close everything down because a couple people will die, okay? We need to be very smart about this. Now, I'm sure I've missed a few things, but generally speaking, those are the rules that I would have put forward to stop the recession that Australia went through. And those, I believe, would have been when the final tally is done, we would have found that the pandemic would have been just as bad in terms of the amount of people that died. Now, we can keep something like that up for a while. Those measures, we can keep it up for a while. But what we can't do is we can't say that we're going to lock down indefinitely or keep locking down after there's a second wave and a third wave and a fourth wave. Now, we can keep something like that going for a number of years as the quality of life, it doesn't really diminish at all. And businesses are given more than enough wiggle room to operate within. We need to trust businesses to do what they can do. Listen to people like Mark Burris. He has been saying, the government needs to be as transparent as possible and give businesses the ability to adapt. That's how they became so good at what they are. People keep forgetting that we need to keep this up, whatever this is, to manage the pandemic for a long time. In fact, we have to keep it up until a vaccine comes around. Now, if it's something like AIDS, which took like 30 years or something, 25 years to find a vaccine, we might not even find a vaccine for this. So we need to find a sustainable way to manage this. Now, we need to find a comfortable way to manage this until a vaccine comes around or until we reach herd immunity. At least this way, we can reach herd immunity sooner, but also prevent any threat of a second wave, as we've seen with nations such as China, which, last month had to lock down tens of millions of people, including places like in Beijing. Now, obviously, hindsight is 20/20 vision, and I'm getting these pointers from watching what's happened around the world, Sweden especially, the US, South Korea, and Italy. But honestly, guys, I think those are probably really good general rules to follow. So now when we look at Australia and we look at Victoria locking down suburbs, what do you think? What are they doing wrong? I'll tell you. They should not be locking down those suburbs. They should be protecting the vulnerable in those suburbs. The young people can handle it. You can't shut down the economy. I mean, some of these areas, they will not even listen to you anyway. So what have you sacrificed? They're not going to listen to you again. And this is a long battle. This is a marathon we're fighting with this virus. And my final word is New South Wales must not lock down. It must not lock down. We can't do this again, okay? We can't. People will not listen. There will be riots. I don't want to see another relative of mine lose their job again just because of this virus. And it's not because of the virus. It's because of your policies you pick. We can do better. We can manage this better. We have the benefit of hindsight. I have granted you the benefit of hindsight by saying we didn't know what we were dealing with, but we can do better now, okay? Now, we've elected you only a year ago to do better. Can you do better? Okay? That goes for both Liberal and Labor. We need you to work together on this. Okay? Stop trying to kneecap each other. It's ridiculous. Come together. You can do this. I believe in you. Thanks.